Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us today. My guest on this edition is the National Institutes of Health Director, Dr. Francis Collins. Dr. Collins, great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Very glad to be able to do so. Thanks for the invitation.
So I wanted to get your overall thoughts about where we are right now regarding the pandemic.
Well, I think there's a lot of good news. Thanks to the amazing progress of getting vaccines into more than 160 million people's arms, we are really seeing finally the drop in number of cases, number of hospitalizations, and numbers of deaths. Not as steep a drop as I would like to see, but we have now seen for several weeks in a row a steady decrease in all 50 states. So the best position we've really been in since this began to be able to say we might just be able to get life back to normal. And much of that to the credit of all the hard work that's gone into getting those vaccines prepared and getting them into people's arms. But there's still about 100 million people who haven't started vaccination yet. And if we want to avoid what otherwise might still be hotspots and outbreaks going forward, especially next fall, this is the time, I think, to try to convince everybody who's still a little on the fence to look again at the evidence and make a decision, which I would hope, having looked at all the data myself, would be to roll up your sleeve, because this is our best chance to help ourselves and help each other.
So many people feel like the pandemic is over. Do you feel that way?
No, it's certainly moving in that direction, but still several hundred people are dying every day from COVID-19, and that's like an entire airliner crashing every day. If that was on the front page, boy, we would think this is a crisis. It's not over. We've gotten a little numbed, I think, to the severity of this illness and to the numbers that are involved. So we're not there yet. But we are at the point where people who have gotten fully vaccinated are starting to live life again. My wife and I, now being at that point, we've been able to invite other immunized couples to come to our house to have dinner together and take masks off and break bread together and say grace together and hug each other at the end of the evening. It is liberating to get there. And that is making you start to feel like, okay, we're almost there. But it's not the right moment to trip when you're just approaching the finish line. And we still, as a nation, aren't there. And we need to be sure we're doing everything we can to get there as quickly and safely as possible. And that's basically a calling to all of us, especially Christians, to love your neighbor, make sure that you're doing your part to help all of those who are vulnerable to get through this too. Just want to say that is something I'm not sure everybody's thought about, that there are people, because they have cancer and they're on chemotherapy, or maybe they've had a kidney transplant. For them, the vaccine doesn't work because their immune system is not able to respond to it. So they're going to be still really vulnerable if this virus is circulating. The best way to keep it from circulating is for the rest of us who have effective immune systems to get vaccinated, and then the virus loses. And we want this virus to lose.
Well, we saw in Ohio where vaccinations were really dwindling, and then they started offering all this money to people, and their vaccination rate went up 45%. They were offering $1 million and a college scholarship, and we're seeing other states offering bonuses like this, and CVS offering tickets to the Super Bowl. And what do you think about all these ideas to try to encourage people to get vaccinated?
Well, I hoped it wouldn't be necessary when it's actually something that you can do that's going to benefit you. But still, for people who have been a little resistant or maybe just haven't gotten around to it, if this is enough to get their attention and go, okay, if I might win a lottery ticket, sure, that's fine.
So aside from the financial incentives, what do you have to say to people who are unvaccinated, particularly now as the summer travel season is kicking off?
Well, first, I need to listen. I think people like me sometimes just seem like we're lecturing all the time, and I'm not sure anybody's particularly impressed with that or has their mind changed. We need to listen. What are the reasons why now 100 million people have not yet gotten started in vaccination? Some people are still worried about whether this is safe, given how quickly the vaccines were in fact put together. But now we have large numbers of people who were vaccinated as part of the trials as far back as last August. And so we're tracking them very carefully, and there are no late sort of surprises here. So if you're one of those that's been in the wait and see, I think we've been able to see, so maybe it's time to stop waiting. We have as much evidence about safety and efficacy of this vaccine as we've almost ever had about a vaccine, and it looks extremely good. But boy, I would just appeal to people, if you have been in one of those places where your kind of mind has been on the negative side of this, maybe time to hit the reset button, look at the evidence, consider what you could do by getting immunized, not only for yourself, but to protect those vulnerable people who are counting on the rest of us. Isn't that something that as Christians we're particularly called to do?
We're going to take a quick break right now and be right back with NIH Director Dr. Francis Collins.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back, continuing our discussion with NIH Director Dr. Francis Collins. What is the latest research regarding how long a person is immune, whether they've received the vaccine or have recovered from the virus, or both combined together?
Great question. It's interesting that we have pretty good evidence that if you got COVID-19, obviously you survived that, your body made antibodies, you fought the virus off. But actually, your resistance to getting reinfected is not as good as somebody who got vaccinated. The vaccine produces a stronger immune response than the natural infection. That seems kind of upside down, but it's very compelling, the data is. That's why we're saying people who got COVID should still go ahead and get vaccinated in order to maximize their immune response, because we have lots of examples in places like Denmark, where it's been closely watched, where people have had COVID twice. South Africa, a lot of people had COVID twice. The vaccine is the best protection against that. But how long does it last? It looks as if the vaccine protection is good for at least 6 months, and that's sort of the strongest data we've got, maybe now 7 months. But most of this data is based upon people who got immunized as part of the clinical trials back in the very late summer and fall of last year. So we just haven't had enough time to see. We can see that the antibody levels do tend to trend downward over time, but they're still at 6 or 7 months in a high enough level that they should be fully protected. I just don't know what that'll look like in a year or 2 years. So it's nobody's confidence here about exactly what will be needed as far as a booster. But I think we should probably expect that at some point a booster will be needed, kind of like your tetanus shot. And will that be like once a year, once every 2 years, once every 5 years? Some of that's also going to depend on these variants that you've been hearing about. So far, we are in a good place that the vaccines in the United States protect against those variants you've heard about in places like India and South Africa and Brazil. But we can't rule out the possibility, especially if the epidemic continues to rage, that there might be another variant still out there yet to emerge for which the vaccines don't quite give you enough protection. And then a new vaccine designed against that would need to be put into the booster. And we're prepared to do that quickly if necessary. I hope we don't have to, but you should be confident the scientists are looking at this and are ready to go if that need arises.
We know that the goal isn't 0 cases and 0 deaths. What would you consider a metric to say this pandemic is finally behind us?
Well, I think most people would be looking for a circumstance where there are no more hotspots, no more outbreaks, and where while the number of cases and deaths has not quite gone to 0, it is certainly considerably lower than where it is right now. We're still seeing 25, 30,000 cases a day. If it was more like 1,000, I'd feel a heck of a lot more reassured about it. And as far as deaths, well, every death is a tragedy. So I'd love to see that number drop as far as possible, and certainly down in the sort of tens instead of the hundreds for us to say that we're where we should be. Again, we're going to have to watch closely because I fear because vaccinations have not been taken up evenly across the country, there are still places where we're at risk of seeing trouble. And that's particularly, it seems, in the Southeast, where vaccination uptake has been considerably lower than it has in other parts of the country for all sorts of complicated reasons. And one of those reasons is just access to figuring out where do you go to get vaccinated. I want to give you a heads up there about how you can find that out. If you just go to vaccines.gov, it will tell you where are the sites near you that have vaccine in stock. Remember, this is free. You don't have to pay anything for it. Many of these will even take walk-ins where you don't have to have an appointment. If you have a cell phone, all you have to do is punch in this particular code, which is 438829, 438829, and then punch in your zip code. And you will get within a minute the location of 3 places near you that have vaccines in stock with their phone numbers if you want to call and make an appointment. And that's no longer a reason to hold off because you're afraid you're going to have to stand in a long line. There's plenty of vaccine out there now, and nobody should be deterred from being able to sign up for this. It's getting really easy.
And we're going to take another quick break and be right back with our discussion with NIH Director Dr. Francis Collins. Stay tuned.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Stay connected with CBN News all day across our platforms.
Welcome back. Continuing our discussion with Dr. Collins. So a lot of people mistakenly believe that herd immunity has actually not been reached yet. A lot of people who haven't been vaccinated sort of feel this sense of security, like, well, where am I going to get it? Because so many people around me have been vaccinated or have recovered.
I don't think we're there yet, and we probably won't be there for the whole country at the same time, because herd immunity is kind of true of a particular community and people move in and out of it. So I think it'd be optimistic for us to imagine that the whole United States would get to, let's say, 85% immunity at the pace we're on. I'd love to see that happen, but nobody should imagine that we're there now. And certainly when you see the fact that many people, 100 million of them, have not actually gotten started yet, we're considerably short of that goal. That is the goal. That is, I mean, I hate the term herd immunity. It sounds like we're all a bunch of cattle. That's not the idea. It's basically, think of it instead as a blanket of protection that you're putting over not just yourself, but your whole community, your family, your friends, and especially those vulnerable people that I mentioned earlier who can't benefit from the vaccine, but we can help them by our healthy immune systems. Taking this opportunity to provide the whole nation with the chance to send this virus packing.
Well, we look forward to the future. And Dr. Collins, we noticed yesterday you were testifying before a Senate committee regarding the origins of the coronavirus, among other things. And you said that you still believe that it is more likely that this coronavirus developed from animal to human transmission rather than a lab leak. Why do you think it's more likely to have been started with animal to human transmission?
I guess based on precedent, when you consider all of the other outbreaks of this sort, that is what's been the case. That's how Ebola happened. That's how HIV happened, coming from an animal to a human. That's how Zika happened. That's how SARS, another coronavirus, and MERS, both of which originally started in bats, they all found their way into humans by natural transmission. Now, it's possible, of course, that this is the exception, but if you're trying to size up what are the likelihoods of particular options, that would seem to be, just on the basis of historical precedent, the most likely. I can't, and I said this in the hearing yesterday, I can't rule out that maybe in the process of transferring from a bat to a human, maybe through some intermediate host, that this might have made, as somebody said, a pit stop on a bench in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's certainly people who are quite convinced that that could have been the case. We just don't have the evidence, and we need that evidence. So I strongly support the strong proposals now coming from the United States that we need to have a really thorough, expert-driven investigation about what happened in Wuhan in late 2019 before this suddenly burst on the whole world.
What do you make of the fact that the host hasn't been found yet? If it was an animal, we know that, for example, SARS, I believe the host was discovered in 4 months, MERS a little bit longer than that, but they haven't found the host animal. Is that very common?
It's unusual because, as you've just said, for SARS and MERS, SARS, it was a civet cat. In MERS, it was a camel, but they all started with the bat. I would have thought by now we would have figured out what the intermediate host was. There was some suggestion it might have been something called a pangolin, but that didn't quite seem to solve the issue. So it's, another big question mark. What exactly was the pathway? Again, if China had been more open to international scientific investigation going back more than a year ago, maybe we would know more about that.
Regarding these lab leak theories, then comes the question that the NIH might have helped fund some gain of function research going on in the Wuhan lab. I saw an interview with you last week with Shannon Bream on Fox News, and I believe you said that was a conspiracy theory. Do you still feel that way? And if so, why?
Well, let me just try and say exactly what really did happen. It is troubling that this discussion seems to have gotten distorted in ways that really don't reflect the facts. First of all, I think given that SARS and MERS both emerged from bats in Chinese caves, as they did, and there was a strong sense that we had not seen the end of that particular kind of risk, I almost think it would have been irresponsible for NIH, the largest supporter of medical research in the world, not to be interested in understanding, well, what other viruses are lurking in bats in those caves. And so we supported a research project by a group in New York that had a subcontract to China to try to capture some of those viruses and study them and try to interpret whether they might be potentially risky for humans. And I think that's entirely legitimate. It was a modest amount of money, and some of that money was, in fact, used to support research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology to investigate those bat viruses. There was no authorization or approval of any gain of function research that would have generated viruses that would have been potentially transmissible or virulent to humans. So I absolutely reject the claim that we had authorized that kind of research. We did not. I can't tell you whether the Wuhan Institute of Virology was doing other experiments with other forms of support, but I can tell you categorically that the NIH would never have supported that. We just wanted to know what viruses were there.
We're going to take one final break and be right back with more from Dr. Francis Collins.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
And welcome back, continuing our discussion with Dr. Francis Collins. Are you concerned that when this investigation is complete, that it will have been revealed that NIH money indirectly funded gain-of-function research or either any research at the Wuhan lab, and that was responsible for the origins of COVID-19?
I'm not concerned that anybody will discover that NIH did something wrong. I'm in the middle of all of that, and I'm quite confident that everything we did was done with the best intentions of trying to protect the public against what might have been a serious risk of a virus emerging from bats in Chinese caves. We needed to be doing that work. I'm also absolutely confident that when that award was made to the Wuhan Institute, which again was pretty modest amount of money, $150,000 a year, that the conditions under which that research was to be done were very clear and did not involve the kind of gain of function that would have been otherwise prohibited. I can't be sure what happens after that. I will say if the Wuhan Institute of Virology decided they wanted to do this kind of prohibited gain of function research, they didn't need our $150,000 to do it. I'm sure they had plenty of other ways to support that. So no, I am not worried that somehow there is going to be some big revelation here and that NIH will turn out to have done something improper. As the NIH director during the last 12 years, I have looked into this in great detail. I think we have done what we needed to do to try to protect the public interest against another pandemic.
From a faith perspective, how has this whole controversy been for you recently when so many people have been starting to accuse the NIH of possibly being complicit in the origins of COVID-19?
Well, frankly, it's very disheartening. The NIH is an institution that is dedicated to trying to find answers to terrible illnesses, trying to prevent them when possible and then treat them when they happen. The people around me are incredibly dedicated, non-political folks, many of them working for a lot less money than they could get if they were in some other sector. And to have this kind of really unfortunate and harmful implications without evidence pointed in the direction of what is often called the National Institutes of Hope is frankly quite discouraging. And I do wish people, before they jumped on that bandwagon, would just take a minute to look at the evidence and realize that there's a whole lot of overlay here that has to do with the desire to make political points or have a nice opportunity for a video and aren't necessarily based upon the facts.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Collins, any final words, any vital thoughts?
Well, let's come back to the positives, because this seems to be so much on everybody's mind right now, this issue. But meanwhile, here we are. It's almost Memorial Day of 2021. A year ago, we were not at all clear how we were going to ever get through this. People were dying in the Northeast. We were starting to see a year ago trouble in the Southeast. And we had no idea what was coming over those next few months, and hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives. But now here we are. We're able to see that there's an end here. We got to work hard to get there, as I said earlier on, and that means all of us rolling up our sleeves when we get the chance, and the chance is here now. But we are going to get through this together. If we could try as best we can to focus on that part and maybe not spend quite so much time on the political figuring of who did what and who to blame for what, then I think we'd be doing a better job of serving our faith and our nation.
All right. Well, Dr. Collins, once again, thank you so much for giving us your time and your insight. And thank you so much for the work you do, not only for our country at the National Institutes of Health, but the work you do to further the kingdom of Christ.
Well, let me finish with Philippians 4, because this is one of the things I think about almost every day. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about such things, and the God of peace will be with you. May the God of peace be with all of us. Thank you.
Indeed. What a great way to end this. Thank you again, Doctor. And thanks to you for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. See you again next time.